Hello and welcome to the ScatterVolt channel, and today I want to bring you guys the best CPU and GPU combinations you can purchase in 2023. If you're a first-time PC builder or you're looking to build a gaming PC this year and you don't know what graphics card and processor combination is going to yield you the most amount of performance at a certain price category, then you come to the right place. In this video, I'll be detailing 10 different CPU and GPU combinations ranging from $100 all the way up to $1,200. And as usual, everything I talk about in this video, including what is behind me, can be found in the description below in case you want to check out any of the processors or graphics cards I've mentioned throughout this video. So we're gonna get right into the first combination, but first, a quick word from our sponsor, Scribe. Scribe is actually pretty cool. It's a free Chrome extension anyone can download that allow you to generate step-by-step browsing guides in a simple format. For instance, if you wanted to show your friend how to locate and download the latest BIOS update for their motherboard, since it can be a little bit cumbersome to find for a first-time PC gamer, you can use Scribe to follow your exact steps you took to find the right update for their system, and that way, they'll know from there on out how to find the right BIOS updates for their motherboard. And it doesn't stop there. You can produce these web browsing guides for people who want to know how to find the right graphics card drivers, or even how to create a Windows bootable media device if they like to upgrade to Windows 11 on their computer. Scribe is a very effective tool at letting users better browse the internet if they're trying something for the first time. So recording the steps you took to get where they need to be can be very helpful. So if you feel like adding Scribe to your web browser is helpful, then be sure to use the download link in the description below or at the top of the comments section. For the first CPU and GPU combo, starting at $100, and trust me, it is all in here, we have the Ryzen 5 4600G costing $100. So yes, this is not clickbait, you're getting a CPU and a GPU in a single processor. So you're getting a 6-core, 12-threaded Ryzen processor with Vega 8 integrated graphics in the 4600G, hence why you can see this little AMD Radeon graphics on the box. Now the cool thing with this is that you can pair this up with a cheaper and older B450 motherboard. Since this is a Ryzen 4000 processor, you don't need to use a more expensive and newer B550 motherboard. So in total, you can get a CPU and GPU combo with a motherboard like this for as low as $170 brand new. And it's even cheaper if you go used. As far as performance goes, we'll get into that a little bit later with our next CPU and GPU combo at $150. That being the Ryzen 5 5600G. Now this is very similar to the 5600G, the 4600G, 6-core, 12-threaded Ryzen processor with Vega 8 graphics, but you are in the updated CPU architecture of the Ryzen 5000 lineup of CPUs. Now, unlike the 4600G, you do need a B550 motherboard to run this processor out of the box without any BIOS updates, and this is about $50 more expensive than the 4600G, but it is a sizable amount faster. And if you're curious about the gaming performance, I've already made a gaming PC build guide at $400 using the same APU, aka all-in-one processor, which you can find carded up in the video or in the description down below, and you'll get decent 1080p 60 to 144 frames per second gaming performance on fairly easy to run PC games. Anyways, enough playing around. Let's actually get into our first CPU and GPU combo in this video. That being at $240, you can get yourself an i3 12100 and the Intel Arc A380. So let's start with the processor. I know I'm holding up a 13100, but just pretend it's a 12100. This costs $100. It's a 4-core, 8-threaded CPU, 12th generation Intel processor on the LGA 1700 socket. So it's got some decent upgradability if you wanted to say upgrade to a 13th gen CPU down the road. And B660 motherboards that you can pair with that i3 or even H610 motherboards are fairly inexpensive. And one of the cool things is that you do have that flexibility between DDR4 and DDR5 RAM if you want to choose a motherboard that will be more future-proof or less future-proof but cheaper. But now let's talk about the graphics card choice, and this is an interesting one. Now, I polled you guys recently on my YouTube channel and I asked if you had $140 to spend on a brand new graphics card, would you get the Arc A380, the Radeon RX 6400, or the GTX 1630? And a lot of you voted for this GPU, and I would have to agree. The Arc A380 came out last summer in 2022, and when it initially launched, it had pretty bad drivers. However, Almost a year on, the graphics card drivers that have been coming out for these ARC graphics cards have improved significantly, not only in performance, but also in user end stability. So I assume the actual user end performance of this is gonna be better than you think. In fact, I am so confident in this graphics card choice for this combo that I'm actually basing my next $500 gaming PC build with this same graphics card. Also, unlike the RX 6400, this does come with a built-in hardware encoder and decoder, that being the AV1 encoder and decoder, which is a fancy way of saying you can record games at the highest quality with the smallest file sizes on this $140 graphics card. So it can do gaming and a good amount of content creation, and for 140 bucks, to top it off, it comes with 6 gigabytes of VRAM. So I very much think it's worth investing in this graphics card, because it'll probably get a lot faster over time, as from what we've seen already with the latest Intel driver updates for these ARC GPUs. Now, moving up about $100, I want you to again go with the i3-12100. It's still a very capable processor. Don't let the 4 cores fool you. But for the graphics card, since we have about $100 more to spend, I'm gonna give you 2 options. You can either go with the Radeon RX 6600 or the Intel Arc A750. So to start with the blue option here, it's a very similar story to the A380 that I was just talking about. The drivers have been improving a lot for this graphics card, and it's actually going toe-to-toe with the RX 6600 in terms of value, which was its strongest selling point at the same price, because both of these cost about $250. Anyways, that said, both of these graphics cards will give you excellent 1080p gaming performance, and it wouldn't be hard to say that these could also do 1440p gaming performance to a pretty good extent. Both of these have 8 gigabytes of VRAM, and they're fairly similar, but the Intel Arc option does have slightly better content creation abilities with that AV1 encoder and decoder, which also means it could actually be a better streaming graphics card. However, the RX 6600 is probably the safer choice in this scenario because it does have better drivers, and the end user experience could be a little bit better than the ARC GPU, since these are Intel's first dedicated graphics cards in a long while. That said though, both of these are really excellent choices, which is why I'm recommending both for this $350 CPU and GPU combo. All right, now at $450, I recommend bumping up your CPU choice to the i5-12400. And then for the graphics card, snag yourself a Radeon RX 6650 XT. So let's start with the processor, and let's talk about this. You may be asking, where are the Ryzen CPUs? Well, they're good, but they're at the end of their lifespan if you're thinking of the Ryzen 5000 series of AM4 CPUs. The reason why I'm hesitant to recommend those is because once you get that processor, the only meaningful upgrade from there on out is the 5800X 3D. Whereas with the 12th gen Intel CPUs, you do have the 13th gen of Intel CPUs you can look forward to upgrading to, if that whether it be like an i7 or i9 in the future, depending on your motherboard. But the upgrade options are very limited right now with that older Ryzen generation that you won't see with the latest 7000 series of CPUs on the new AM5 socket. That said, this is 6 cores, 12 threads, 12th gen, LGA 1700, plenty fast. And we're gonna pair that up with the Radeon RX 6650 XT with 8 gigabytes of VRAM, and this is gonna cost you around $280. Another very excellent price to performance graphics card you can get. Now this can do 1080p, but honestly, it can do 1440p gaming as well at a fairly high frame rate depending on the game. And that's why I'm gonna recommend it for this $350 CPU and GPU combo. And really, if you're getting a 1080p gaming monitor, don't look any more expensive than this. This is probably the fastest you want to get if you're going to use a 1080p gaming monitor with your next gaming PC. This is the most expensive like Jenga set I got right now in my house. Oh my God, not this one. Okay, now at $550. Once again, get the i5-12400. That's pretty set in stone. But now that we have an extra $100 to spend, I want you to get, for the graphics card, either the GeForce RTX 3060 Ti or the Radeon RX 6700 XT. Now, both of these are around the same price, although the RX 6700 XT is cheaper at about, I wanna say, $380 brand new. The 3060 Ti is still around $400, and the RX 6700 XT across the board is the faster graphics card, whereas the 3060 Ti is slower. Also do note the 6700 XT comes with more VRAM. It has 12 gigabytes of VRAM, and the 3060 Ti only comes with 8, and you're spending $400 on a graphics card with 8 gigabytes of VRAM. That said though, the performance is enough to justify my recommendation of the 3060 Ti in this CPU and GPU combo, unlike the 3060 and 3050, which are still very overpriced. So I'll say for about 85% of you who are watching this video, get the 6700 XT. However, if you're a 3D artist, then the 3060 Ti makes sense because those CUDA cores are pretty undeniable in how useful they are for creative applications. And I guess if you want to do some ray tracing, then yeah, the 3060 Ti is there, but once again, this has 8 gigabytes of VRAM, this has 12, and we're already seeing, even in ray traced games, the 6700 XT with that extra VRAM being more useful in those scenarios, despite this being the better card for ray tracing. So if you had $600 to spend on a CPU and GPU combo for your next gaming PC, still choose either between the RX 6700 XT or the RTX 3060 Ti, but for the CPU, upgrade to a 13400F. So unlike the 12400F, this is technically a 10-core CPU because it's a 6-core CPU with 6 physical cores, but 4 efficiency cores, which means you get a total of 16 threads. And for $200, you're basically getting a 12600K, but for about $50 less, and on the latest 13th gen platform from Intel. All right, next, we're gonna jump up to $800. And in my opinion, you don't need to spend any more than this for a CPU and GPU combo, because you're literally getting pretty much the best of the best. For the CPU, once again, get the 13400F. It's a very well-rounded CPU at $200. And then to spend the remaining $600, grab yourself an RX 6800 XT. In my honest opinion, the 6800 XT is the most underrated graphics card on the market. Typically with graphics cards, the higher you go in price, the more diminishing returns you get in terms of the performance per dollar, but that isn't the case with the 6800 XT. With some tweaks, you can get this close to about a 6900 XT while saving yourself about $150 to $200. And more or less, this is an RTX 3080 in disguise for about $250 less. The value is simply just too good to ignore. There aren't any really outstanding options from Team Green from around the same price range other than the next combo we're gonna talk about. So if you're gonna spend $800 on a CPU and GPU combo for gaming, keep it to the 6800 XT. And again, in my opinion, you don't need any more than this graphics card for a very excellent gaming experience. But if you did have thousands of dollars to spend on a CPU and GPU combo, which is simply absurd, this is what you should get. For $1,000, I mean, you're welcome to stick it to the 13400F. It's still gonna completely use this graphics card right here, which I do recommend either the RTX 4070 Ti or the Radeon RX 7900 XT. All right, so between the 4070 Ti and the RX 7900 XT, the 4070 Ti costs $800, comes with 12 gigabytes of VRAM. It is actually probably the more power efficient graphics card, but it is also slower. And in terms of ray tracing, this is faster than the 7900 XT, but on a word for the 7900 XT, it is more expensive, but it is faster when it comes to regular rasterization performance. And while yes, it's not as fast in terms of ray tracing, it's not that bad. However, do keep this in mind. You're paying $800 for a graphics card with 12 gigabytes of VRAM, and that 7900 XT comes with 20 gigabytes of VRAM for only about $30 more. But we have one more CPU and GPU combo to talk about in this video. If you had a lot of money to spend, which I don't get it. I don't get it. I don't know, get yourself like one of those ridiculous ultra wide monitors if you had an extra like $500 to spend. But for $1,200, for my last CPU and GPU combo in this video, I recommend getting either the 4070 Ti or the RX 7800 XT, or grab yourself, but grab yourself a Ryzen 7 7700X for about $340. Now, up until this point in the video, I haven't been really recommending Ryzen 7000 because the motherboard costs for the Ryzen 7000 processors, even at the low end, are still fairly expensive. B650 motherboards are still mostly hovering around $200, and you can only get them for a good price if they're on sale, which doesn't always happen. That's why I've been mostly recommending Intel up until this point, is because they have cheaper motherboards, cheaper processors, and that DDR4 and DDR5 flexibility, because DDR5 RAM is more expensive, and unfortunately, Ryzen 7000 processors only come with DDR5 RAM as a requirement. That said though, if you have this much money to spend, you might as well get onto the new socket and platform from AMD. That way you don't have to upgrade your motherboard again, because there'll be some pretty long lifespan support for that AM5 socket for future processors, and you'll already be on DDR5 RAM, so you won't have to buy DDR4 and then get DDR5. You'll already be on DDR5. And the 7700X I think is still plenty for many of you gamers. It's 8 cores, 16 threads, overclockable, and very darn fast. I don't see the need for the 7900X or 7950X if you're a gamer, because those are just more cores and more threads that won't add any extra performance to your gaming experience. Only get those if you probably need that amount of cores and threads. So that is it for today's video. And once again, if you want to check out any of the CPU or GPUs I've discussed in this video, they will all be linked in the description below if you want to check out any of them for yourself to maybe base your next gaming PC around. So that'd be pretty cool. So that's all I gotta say. Thank you so much for watching, and this is the ScatterVolt channel, signing out.